The Eagle Brief, Donald Trump, the Insurrection Act, and the Fragile Edge of American Democracy. Introduction. A legal sword or a political bludgeon? As President Donald J. Trump reasserts control from the Oval Office in 2025, the shadow of the Insurrection Act of 1807 looms large over the American experiment. With a political base energized by populist nationalism and rhetoric aimed at restoring order and sovereignty, speculation intensifies over whether Trump may invoke the act to pursue his domestic agenda, particularly with respect to immigration enforcement and civil unrest. What follows is a comprehensive analysis of the Insurrection Act, its historical precedents, Trump's track record with institutional defiance, the legal and democratic implications of a potential invocation, and worst-case scenarios grounded in historical parallels. Section 1. The Insurrection Act, History, Purpose, and Ambiguity. The Insurrection Act of 1807 permits the President to deploy U.S. military forces domestically under specific conditions, to suppress insurrections, enforce federal authority, or repel invasions. As an exception to the Posse Comitatus Act, which limits military involvement in domestic law enforcement, it grants wide latitude under vaguely defined terms like insurrection and domestic violence. Historically, the act has been invoked sparingly. Eisenhower, 1957, enforcing desegregation in Little Rock. George H.W. Bush, 1992, responding to the Los Angeles riots. Donald Trump, 2020, threatened, during Black Lives Matter protests, but ultimately not used. What sets the current context apart is not just the intent to use the act, but the broader plan to defy judicial review and federalism under the guise of crisis response. Section 2. The Trump Doctrine, Defying Norms, Resisting Constraints. Donald Trump has repeatedly demonstrated his willingness to flout institutional boundaries. Ignoring court rulings during the 2017 travel ban rollout. Deploying federal agents to Portland against state objections in 2020. Issuing an executive order in 2025 mandating military review of southern border enforcement. According to reports from The Washington Post and Reuters, Trump has already established military buffer zones at the border and indicated willingness to use the Insurrection Act for expanded immigration enforcement. These actions align with MAGA priorities and reveal a potential trajectory toward unchecked executive authority. Section 3. Worst-case scenario, an American Rubicon. Stage 1. Manufactured or real crisis. A border surge, mass protest, or localized violence is labeled an insurrection. Trump invokes the act, citing national security. Stage 2. Domestic military deployment. Federal troops are deployed to states that oppose the federal agenda, such as California or New Mexico. These military zones begin detaining migrants and protesters. Stage 3. Judicial defiance. Courts issue injunctions. Trump dismisses them, claiming emergency powers. Federal agencies begin operating outside judicial oversight. Stage 4. Institutional erosion. Democratic governors refuse compliance. Congress gridlocks. The Supreme Court's authority is questioned or nullified through noncompliance. Stage 5. Public reaction and radicalization. Protests erupt. Far-right militias join enforcement under the banner of patriotism. Civil unrest escalates. The military fractures or is forced to take a side. Section 4. Historical parallels, lessons in the fall of republics. 1. Julius Caesar, 49 BCE. Caesar defied the Roman Senate by crossing the Rubicon, triggering civil war and ending the republic. Trump's invocation of the Insurrection Act could serve as a modern Rubicon moment, a legal act that undoes the constitutional fabric. 2. Adolf Hitler, 1933. After the Reichstag fire, Hitler passed emergency decrees under the Weimar Constitution. These laws, while legal, dismantled democracy. Trump's invocation could do the same, using law to erode liberty. 3. Abraham Lincoln, 1861. Suspension of habeas corpus during the Civil War was legally gray but justified by existential conflict. Trump's context lacks this necessity, making such a move far more dangerous. 4. Recep Tayyip Erdogan, 2016, a failed coup in Turkey allowed Erdogan to consolidate power via purges and legal changes. Trump could exploit border chaos or protest as a domestic equivalent. 5. FDR and Japanese internment, 1942. Legal but morally indefensible. The U.S. government interned 120,000 Japanese Americans. This reveals how fear can legalize the indefensible. Section 5. MAGA motivations and strategic incentives. For Trump and his base, invoking the act could enforce federal immigration policy over states' objections, rally MAGA supporters with visible demonstrations of force, undermine blue states' resistance to the federal agenda, expand precedent for executive authority under vague national emergencies. Such actions would not merely be authoritarian impulses, they would be strategic power plays within a constitutional vacuum. Section 6. Constitutional fractures and democratic collapse. Checks and balances erode, judicial rulings ignored, congressional oversight paralyzed. Federalism undermined, states overruled militarily. Military neutrality threatened, orders versus oaths. Civil liberties suspended, detentions, surveillance, and curfews normalized. Legal precedent set for future leaders to invoke and abuse the same tools. Once crossed, the Rubicon is not easily uncrossed. Conclusion: the edge of the American experiment. What makes this scenario both chilling and plausible is not that it requires an overt coup. It requires only the strategic invocation of existing law, a passive Congress, an overwhelmed judiciary, and a public too fractured to resist collectively. The Insurrection Act, designed as a last resort, may soon become a first-strike tool in the hands of a president who sees loyalty as law and opposition as treason. The world should watch closely, for the greatest threats to American democracy may now come from within. If Trump chooses to invoke the Insurrection Act, the United States may not face its end in a violent rupture but in a slow, legal erosion of everything its Constitution was designed to prevent. The Eagle Brief is a hypothetical analytical product based on open-source information, historical precedent, and current political dynamics.